Hello everyone, I am Lucaj. I'm a researcher in AI auditing and regulation, and I'm here to present the paper Regulation is Not All You Need. The focus of my research is to understand the asymmetries present in between the legal requirements that are emerging around many jurisdictions in the world and the actionable measures that can be adopted by companies internally to not only provide legal compliance, but also to achieve better quality overall of the AI systems they're developing. So in this presentation, the motivation behind the study will be delineated, the importance of addressing such gaps to provide legal certainty. The related work will be delineated by showing the practices that emerge in the literature, and then the methodology and the analysis conducted to obtain research objective of the paper will be presented, as well as the key findings with the discussion and the policy recommendations. So the motivation to conduct such research really emerged through the disruptive nature of such AI systems and the increasing emerging headlines unveiling the negative consequences of their deployment. So the issues emerging expose the absence of oversight mechanisms and the asymmetries present between the lack of adoption of best practices internally to improve the quality of AI systems, as well as mitigating their potential risks, and the legal uncertainty and lack of governance measures that can incentivize the adoption of such practices internally. The paper focuses on the proposed regulation of the European Union by analyzing the current operational issues in the proposed regulation and the practices that must be leveraged to translate the legal requirements into actionable conformity assessment practices. So in the related work section, the practices and methodologies that can be leveraged to address the gaps between the abstract legal requirements and the best practices that must be adopted internally are explored. So practices coming from the software engineering domain, such as bug bountings, which consist of financially rewarding security experts to unveil the vulnerabilities of the systems, audit trails that can create accountability by recording the important decisions made throughout the development, or red team exercises where experts outside of the organization are staging adversarial attacks to really expose cybersecurity threats and vulnerabilities of the models, and incident analysis, which are widely deployed in other industries such as aviation, to really understand what went wrong, what led to an incident, and what can be done to prevent that in the future. Moreover, in the literature, documentation practices have emerged, such as model cards, which is a transparent documentation method for reporting the performance of a model, data sheets, which provide details about the tests conducted on the data set and its recommended use, fact sheets, which aim to document all the relevant practices along the development of AI systems. But one of the main contributions has been the research on auditing methodologies, because it could really help to record important design decisions and identify the causal relation between decisions and the risks that might have emerged. So really provide comprehensive methodologies throughout the life cycle to really understand the potential risks, mitigate them in time before deployment. Moreover, many toolkits have been developed, which could also help practitioners into, for example, detecting the diversity and bias in data sets, and also manage the fairness metrics. So to address the research objectives of the study, qualitative analysis has been selected through semi-structured interviews. The table shows the candidates and their respective backgrounds. By interviewing experts from different disciplines, domains, whether in academia or the industry, the study could analyze the asymmetries present in the regulatory proposal of the AI Act and their translation into actionable measures. So the interviews were processed through a framework analysis, which can draw relationships between different parts of the data and can cluster them into different key themes. So the key findings of the analysis have been clustered around four main themes. The first one focusing on the state-of-the-art best practices that must be further developed, such as how to achieve transparency and explainability in practice whilst preserving intellectual property, the need to develop testing methodologies for AI, which have been proven to be very successful in software engineering domain, for example. The second theme identified the operational issues in the proposed legislation, for example, the intersection with other legislation such as consumer law, which causes legal uncertainty on what needs to be done to actually comply with all these different legislations, all these different requirements. The language that causes uncertainty because of problematically formulated requirements that are too abstract and seem to be non-technically feasible. So for example, there were issues that emerged in the literature such as error-free data, and the experts are aware that such issues will be corrected until the AI Act is final, but still it's necessary to solve the lack of such technical language. And the third team focused on the practices that must be leveraged to improve the overall quality of systems and enable compliance, such as documentation, of course, that enables also a proof of what has been done throughout the development, auditing, which is a key practice to really conduct the conformity assessment required by the AI Act for high-risk systems, assurance practices to really verify the validity of the claims made about the system, the necessity to develop data quality methodologies to really understand how data impacts model performance and how such unintended consequences can be detected. And the fourth theme really focused around novel governance solutions that are necessary, such as standards, which can solve the gray zones, certification, which is necessary to prove compliance, but also novel tools like policy prototyping, where you can really test how a legislation should be formulated to be technically feasible to comply with it, or regulatory sandboxes where the legislation can be tested to provide feedback to policymakers, or digital hubs that can solve the problems of financing regulatory sandboxes and where private and public institutions could cooperate together. So the paper really identified four main issues and gaps. So there is a lack of holistic methodologies to be conducted throughout the life cycle of the development and deployment of AI systems, which could lead to the risks emerging later on. And it's also hard to actually fix these issues later on because some of the choices made early on are not documented well, and it's very hard to intervene. There is a necessity to mandate actionable practices in the legal requirements, to create legal clarity, and also to enable the development of well-drafted standards and certification requirements. AI auditing must be developed further because it could really contribute to the development of life cycle methodologies of really assessing the risks of systems and preventing them in time. But there is also need for novel governance solutions because the current top-down approach could be really problematic to address such fast evolving technology, really. So there is a need to have in-house training of technical expertise that can really translate then into well-drafted policy. So in conclusion, the research conducted to some policy recommendations, such as the need to mandate audits, which could really create a bridge into the operational gaps of the abstract legal requirements and the conformity assessment practices that must be conducted to comply and improve the quality. The necessity to include technical expertise in public institutions, to have a clearer formulated legislation with technically feasible practices in it, but also the need to develop accredited certification and harmonized standards to really improve and address the operational gaps currently present and really solve the gray zones and the legal uncertainty that practitioners have. Thank you so much for listening, and I'm looking forward to your questions and feedback.